Understand this. The human brain is weak against what it cannot see. When people know your every move, they build walls against you. They prepare counters. But when you remain hidden, when you reveal nothing, you hack their psychology. You force their minds into overdrive, filling the silence with fear, doubt, and obsession. Exposure kills power. Mystery multiplies it. This is why you don't always show your strength. If they see it, they measure it. If they measure it, they learn how to attack it. But if you remain a closed book, their imagination does the work for you. And the imagination always exaggerates. It makes you larger, darker, more dangerous than you actually are. The hidden man terrifies because he cannot be defined. And what cannot be defined cannot be defeated. Write this in the comments right now. My silence controls their mind. Because once you grasp this, you'll never waste energy proving yourself again. The more they see of you, the less their mind respects you. This is Psychology 101. The brain adapts. The moment something is predictable, it loses its power. That's why overexposure kills kings, leaders, even ordinary men. They become familiar. And familiarity breeds contempt. Think of it like this. A mystery unsettles the mind. But once solved, it becomes boring, even laughable. People don't attack the unknown people, attack what they've already mapped out. If they can explain you, they can contain you. That's why Machiavelli warned, hide your intentions, hide your limits. Never give them a complete picture. Because once they know the edges of your power, they will test those edges until they break. But if you stay hidden, you leave them guessing. They waste energy plotting against shadows, while you conserve energy for decisive strikes. Their imagination works for you, not against you. And here's the key, the imagination always exaggerates. When people don't know what you're capable of, they assume you're capable of everything. You might be strong, or you might be invincible. They won't risk it. Psychology calls this the uncertainty effect. Humans fear the undefined more than the defined. A revealed weakness invites attack. A hidden one keeps enemies paralyzed. You become like a dark room. Everyone imagines monsters inside it, even if the room is empty. And those imagined monsters? They are more terrifying than reality could ever be. This is why leaders fall when they start explaining themselves. When they start defending against rumors, when they let the public see too much. Exposure strips away aura. It makes you small. Enough to be mocked, criticized, attacked. What once seemed larger than life becomes ordinary. And the ordinary is disposable. Understand this. Every word you speak, every move you reveal, gives away a piece of your advantage. You may think you're clarifying, but in truth, you're dismantling your own power. Overexposure is death by 1,000 cuts. Slowly, silently, it bleeds you dry. But the hidden man? He survives, he thrives. He becomes untouchable because no one knows where to aim. He lets others argue, panic, and waste their strength on ghosts. Meanwhile, he watches, waits, and strikes only when it matters. So ask yourself, are you the one burning energy proving yourself? Or are you the one sitting in silence, letting the world exhaust itself trying to figure you out? Remember, exposure makes you predictable. Mystery makes you immortal. Comment this right now. Predictability is weakness. Mystery is strength. Because if you don't burn this truth into your psychology, you'll keep giving away the very power that silence would have preserved. Power doesn't always come from being loud, visible, or constant. In fact, psychology proves the opposite. The scarcer something is, the more valuable it becomes. The human brain overvalues rarity. The rare diamond is precious, the common stone is ignored. When you show up everywhere, speaking endlessly, explaining constantly, you become that common stone, ordinary, forgettable. But when you make your presence rare, every appearance becomes an event. Every word feels like prophecy. This is why The most feared figures in history spoke less than their enemies. Their silence was heavier than words. Their absence was louder than speeches. Because people don't just listen to what you say, they obsess over what you don't say. They dissect your silence, assigning meaning where none exists. They assume intention where there may be none. That is the psychological trick. Your silence becomes their noise. Think about it. If you vanish from a room, you leave a vacuum. And the human mind hates vacuums. People rush to fill the gap with guesses, theories, rumors. That vacuum becomes a storm of speculation, and speculation is far more powerful than explanation. It bends perception in your favor, because the less you reveal, the more others imagine. Machiavelli understood this well. He advised rulers not to exhaust their people with constant exposure. A prince should not always be seen. He should appear rarely, decisively, like a flash of lightning in the dark. Scarcity magnifies presence. People fear what they can't predict, and they worship what they can't possess. This is why restraint is a weapon. Each time you hold back a word, you sharpen its impact. Each time you withhold your presence, you multiply its weight. When you finally move, the world pays attention not because of what you did, but because of all the times you didn't. Understand the psychology here. The man who is always visible becomes wallpaper. The man who is scarce becomes unforgettable. The more you pull back, the larger your shadow grows. The more you disappear, the more your myth expands. That is the paradox of power. Absence builds presence. So burn this into your mind. Don't waste yourself on constant exposure. Discipline your appearances. Make them rare, calculated, deliberate. Every time you vanish, you grow. Every time you hold silence, you command. Every time you choose absence, you own presence. Write this in the comments right now. My absence commands attention. Because when you master this law, you won't need to beg for respect. They'll give it to you the moment you walk in, because your silence already spoke before you arrived. Fear makes people cautious, but mystery makes them obedient. Psychology explains why. The human brain is desperate for certainty. When people don't understand you, they project onto you. They invent motives, powers, and dangers that may not even exist. And in that haze of uncertainty, obedience is born. It's easier to submit to what you might be capable of than to test the unknown and risk destruction. Think about this. When a ruler is always visible, his subjects measure him. They see his mistakes. They compare his words against his actions. And slowly, their loyalty weakens. Why? Because familiarity humanizes. It strips away awe. It makes people bold enough to challenge him. But when that ruler becomes scarce, when his presence is felt more than it is seen, his people obey not from love or habit, but from unease. They obey because the cost of defiance feels too high. This is why the most dangerous leaders don't speak often. They let their silence work for them. Their people remain loyal not because they are convinced, but because they are unsure. That uncertainty is more binding than belief. You can argue against words. You cannot argue against a shadow. Machiavelli hinted at this. It is safer for a prince to be feared than loved. But he left out the deeper truth. Fear itself is limited if it is fully understood. When people know exactly what you'll do, they will adjust and resist. But when you remain unpredictable, when your presence is hidden, fear evolves into obedience. Not because they know what you'll do, but because they don't. That uncertainty breaks their will to resist. This isn't cruelty, it's control. The psychology of obedience shows that people are more likely to follow orders when authority feels untouchable, mysterious, and absolute. If you seem too human, they question you. If you seem beyond reach, they follow you. So remember this. Exposure breeds familiarity. Familiarity breeds contempt, but mystery breeds loyalty. It makes people guard your reputation, spread your myth, and enforce your will without you lifting a finger. They become servants to the aura you created by staying hidden. That is how hidden presence doesn't just silence enemies, it bends allies, followers, even rivals into obedience. You don't command them with force. You command them with absence. Write this in the comments. My mystery makes them obey. Because once you own this truth, you'll never waste energy chasing loyalty. It will chase you. Fear is sharp, but paranoia is endless. Fear fades once the threat is clear. Paranoia never sleeps because the mind cannot rest when it doesn't. No, this is why staying hidden is more powerful than being seen. Visibility gives them certainty. Mystery drives them insane. Psychology proves it. The brain is wired to complete patterns, to fill in gaps. When it encounters the unknown, it cannot let go. It creates stories, explanations, and scenarios to make sense of the silence. But here's the twist. Those stories are always worse than the truth. Imagination exaggerates. It inflates your power, multiplies your reach, and paints you as larger than life. By withholding yourself, you become a monster in their minds. One they can't escape. Your enemies start asking questions. What is he planning? When will he strike? How much power does he really have? The more they ask, the more they doubt. And doubt is poison. It fractures alliances, breeds suspicion, and paralyzes action. They begin to distrust each other more than they fear you. They see your shadow in every move, even when you're not there. Machiavelli would say, never allow your enemy certainty. Certainty makes them bold. Uncertainty makes them hesitate. And hesitation is death in the game of power. When they cannot predict you, they over-prepare, they waste resources. They exhaust themselves fighting an enemy who hasn't even moved yet. You win without striking a blow. Understand this. Overexposure makes you a target. Mystery makes you a phantom. And no one can fight a phantom. They'll punch at shadows until their strength is gone, while you remain untouched. Paranoia is the greatest battlefield because it forces your enemy to fight themselves. This is why you must discipline yourself not just to hide, but to hide strategically. Silence is not absence, it's control. Disappearance is not weakness, it's psychological warfare. You don't vanish because you are afraid. You vanish to infect their minds with doubt, to make them question every step, to erode their certainty until they break themselves. Remember this. You don't need to destroy your enemies directly. You only need to plant enough mystery that they destroy themselves. Write this in the comments. My silence breeds their paranoia. Because once you master this law, you'll never chase victory again. They'll hand it to you while they collapse under the weight of their own fear. Power is not only about what you do, it is about when you do it. Most men lose not because they are weak, but because they move too soon, too predictably. They panic, they show their hand before the game has even begun. But the one who stays hidden controls the clock. Silence buys time, and time used well is the deadliest weapon. Psychology explains this clearly. Anticipation heightens impact. When people expect something, their senses sharpen. When nothing happens, tension builds. That tension is a form of pressure, and pressure weakens minds before the battle even starts. The longer you withhold, the stronger the tension becomes. And when you finally strike, the blow lands like thunder. Machiavelli advised rulers to be patient hunters, not to chase every opportunity, but to wait until their prey was exposed, careless, or distracted. To remain silent until the perfect moment arrived, then act with speed and precision. In this way, silence isn't passive, it's preparation. It's the sharpening of the blade before it touches flesh. Most people rush to act because they fear being forgotten. But that's an illusion. The more you hold back, the more you haunt them. They cannot forget what they cannot predict. Your absence gnaws at them more than your presence ever could. And when the silence finally breaks, it doesn't just shock it. Crushes, remember. Every move you reveal too early kills your advantage. But every move you delay until the exact moment multiplies its impact. Timing turns a simple gesture into a decisive strike. Comment this right now. My silence controls the moment. Because once you learn to command time itself, no enemy can move against you without falling into your trap. Visibility makes you ordinary. Mystery makes you legendary. Psychology shows us that when the mind has no full picture, it invents one, and it always exaggerates. By staying hidden, you don't just protect yourself, you allow others to build myths around you. This is why rulers who appeared rarely seemed godlike. Their absence made them larger than life. People whispered about their power, imagined their reach, feared their unseen hand. In truth, the less you reveal, the more dangerous you seem. Machiavelli hinted at this. Reputation is more powerful than reality. Reality can be measured. Reputation cannot. When you stay hidden, you let others spread your legend while you sit in silence. Untouched. Comment this now. My mystery builds my myth. Because once you understand this, you'll never need to chase respect again. It will grow in your shadow. People chase what they cannot have. Psychology calls it scarcity bias. The less accessible something is, the more valuable it becomes. When you speak rarely, your words carry weight. When you appear rarely, your presence becomes addictive. They start waiting on you. They start needing your approval. This is the hidden trick of power. Silence makes others lean in. They begin to depend on your reactions, your appearances, your decisions. And dependence is the purest form of control. Machiavelli knew this. A ruler should not drown his court with constant words. He should appear like the sun, rare, but necessary. His silence makes others desperate for his light. And that desperation turns into obedience. Comment this. My silence makes them need me. Because when people depend on your presence, you don't have to chase loyalty, they deliver it themselves. Betrayal does not come from your enemies. It comes from those closest to you, the ones who believe they understand you, the ones who think they can predict you, the ones who have mapped your mind and measured your limits. That is the hidden danger of exposure. Every detail you reveal is a potential weapon handed to someone else. Think about it. How do assassins strike? They learn your patterns. They study your routine. They wait at the place you always walk, at the time you always appear. How do traitors plot? They discover your weaknesses, your fears, your habits, and they sharpen them into blades. Betrayal requires knowledge. And knowledge comes only when you give yourself away. But the man who remains hidden, unreadable, unpredictable, he is almost impossible to betray. You cannot strike what you cannot see. You cannot trap what you cannot define. The unknown is untouchable. This is why mystery is not just a weapon, it is armor. Psychology explains why. The brain craves certainty. Without it, people hesitate. They second guess. They create stories in their heads, and those stories are always exaggerated. If they cannot measure your limits, they assume you have none. If they cannot predict your moves, they imagine you are always 2 steps ahead. And that imagination kills the courage to betray. No one dares to test the man who might already know their plans. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers never to be too open, never to expose their entire nature. Once people believe they fully understand you, they stop respecting you. Worse, they start scheming against you. But if you are unpredictable, sometimes generous, sometimes cruel, sometimes present, sometimes absent, no one can form a stable plan against you. They are forced to stay loyal, if only out of fear of the unknown. Look through history. The leaders who fell to betrayal were not the mysterious ones. They were the transparent ones, the overly visible ones, the predictable ones. Julius Caesar was betrayed by men who knew his habits, his weaknesses, his hunger for the people's approval. They could plan around him because he was too exposed. But figures like Stalin, cloaked in paranoia and secrecy, turned betrayal into suicide. Even his closest allies lived in fear, never certain of where they stood. That's the psychological truth. Betrayal thrives in clarity. Mystery suffocates it. If people cannot calculate you, they cannot risk moving against you. Their doubt keeps them paralyzed. Their paranoia makes them cautious. And so your silence, your absence, your unpredictability, these become shields. Far stronger than armies. So discipline yourself. Stop showing every move. Stop sharing every thought. Stop being predictable. The moment they know your patterns, you've already armed them against you. But if you remain unreadable, you will never be an easy target. Your mystery forces them to stay loyal, or at least to stay afraid. And in the game of power, fear is loyalty's truest form. Write this in the comments right now. My mystery shields me. Because once you burn this truth into your mind, you'll stop handing people the knives they need to cut you down. Silence will become your armor. Mystery will become your fortress. And betrayal will die before it can ever touch you. Now you see the pattern. Every truth I've given you circles back to one law. What remains hidden survives. What is exposed dies. Power is not about being everywhere. It's about being everywhere in their imagination, while being nowhere in reality. Think about the psychology. The human mind fears what it cannot understand. It bends to mystery, not to clarity. Clarity makes men bold. Mystery makes them hesitate. And hesitation is death in any struggle. That's why rulers who expose themselves, explaining, defending, constantly appearing, ended as prey. They thought visibility built loyalty, but visibility only built contempt. They handed their enemies the blueprints of their downfall. Machiavelli knew better. He advised princes to conceal their intentions, to disguise their limits, to keep their power undefined. A defined ruler is vulnerable. An undefined ruler is immortal. Your silence should terrify more than your words. Your absence should shake the ground more than your presence. Your unpredictability should be the chain that binds both friend and enemy. History confirms it. Leaders who vanished strategically, who spoke rarely, who left their people guessing, became legends. Their myths outlived them. Why? Because the less people knew, the more they imagined. And imagination is stronger than truth. Truth can be debated. Myths cannot. When you remain hidden, your shadow does the work for you, building fear, loyalty, obedience, and paranoia everyone around you. But let me warn you, this path demands discipline. Most people can't handle silence. They want to be seen, to be validated, to prove themselves. That hunger is what makes them weak. The desperate need for recognition bleeds them dry before they ever become powerful. If you want to be untouchable, you must kill that hunger. You must embrace restraint as your strategy, silence as your weapon, and mystery as your shield. Understand this final truth. It is not the loud man who commands the world. It is the man who can disappear at will. It is not the one who explains, but the one who leaves others explaining themselves. It is not the one who shows everything, but the one who reveals nothing and yet controls everything. That is the essence of power, not force, not noise, not exposure, but presence without presence, fear without action, control without chains. So the choice is yours. Be the man who is fully known, fully exposed, fully predictable, and watch as respect drains from you, as betrayal creeps closer, as your name shrinks into dust. Or be the man who is hidden, silent, unreadable, and watch as your shadow grows larger than your body, your absence heavier than your presence, your silence louder than thunder. Write this one last time in the comments. I am untouchable in silence. Because if you carry this law with you, you will no longer need to fight for power. Power will bend toward you. Enemies will destroy themselves before reaching you. And you, hidden, silent, unreadable, will stand above it all. This is your final warning. Learn to disappear. Learn to remain unseen. Learn to let silence do the work of 1,000 weapons. That is how you stop being a man in the crowd and become the shadow they fear forever.